It's been obviously fantastic, and she's been a little joy of heaven. But at the same time, it is a more responsibility looking after two little ones.
No one expected the Royal Ascot to become the setting for one of the most uncomfortable royal moments in years. But when Camilla's granddaughter reportedly reduced Princess Charlotte to tears with a cruel remark, the future king's patience snapped. What followed wasn't a royal scandal. It was a quiet reckoning. Prince William didn't speak publicly, but his next move sent shockwaves through the palace. So, what really happened behind the scenes? Buckle up, because this story changes everything you thought you knew. A day of elegance turns awkward. Every year, there's one event on the royal calendar that brings out the very best of British tradition. A day where feathers, fascinators, and formality collide in the most elegant way possible. The grounds are grand, the carriages gleam, and the atmosphere? Simply electric. It's the sort of gathering where you can spot dukes in top hats sipping champagne, celebrities brushing shoulders with aristocrats, and cameras flashing from every angle. For the royal family, it's not just about showing up, it's about showing up in style. This year was no exception. As always, crowds gathered hours before the official opening, hoping to catch a glimpse of royalty stepping out in their seasonal best. The lawns were freshly cut, horses glided across the tracks like polished clockwork, and the weather, thankfully, held up with a soft summer breeze that gave life to every flowing dress and tilted hat. Among the arrivals, it was the younger royals who stole the show. Princess Charlotte, hand in hand with her mother, radiated a quiet confidence that only seemed to grow with each passing year. Her outfit, simple but classic, mirrored Kate's effortless style. But it wasn't just about fashion. Something was captivating about the way Charlotte greeted guests, nodded politely at photographers, and giggled softly with her brothers. For someone so young, she carried herself with poise well beyond her age. This unnamed annual event has long served as a bridge between tradition and modern royal visibility. While older generations used it to reinforce protocol, William and Kate have turned it into a family affair. One where their children can experience royal duty without losing their humanity. And that's what made the day so special. It wasn't staged. It wasn't cold. It felt real. You could see it in the little things. George adjusting his collar awkwardly, Louis pointing at horses with wide-eyed excitement, Charlotte whispering something to her mum that made them both laugh. The public adored it, commentators praised it, and for a while, everything felt perfectly in place. The event itself was massive. Thousands in attendance, elegant marquees stretching across the estate, rows of white chairs and royal banners fluttering under the sun. Traditional folk music mixed with the clinking of glasses. Staff moved with quiet precision, guiding VIPs to their seats. Conversations flowed easily. So did the wine. But beneath the spectacle and sparkle, no one could have predicted that this seemingly perfect day would take such a sharp turn. That somewhere between the second race and the stroll to the private family enclosure, an interaction would occur. Small in voice, massive in impact. An interaction that would stop Prince William cold in his tracks. One that would ripple far beyond that day's schedule. Because sometimes, even in a crowd of thousands, it takes just one cruel sentence to change everything. And little did anyone know that's exactly what was about to happen. So, what did William do once the race ended and the crowds went home? Stay with us. The words that cut, deeper than crowns. It began as a moment no one noticed. One of those quiet pauses during a busy day, tucked between the noise of horses galloping and the rustle of silk dresses in the breeze. Charlotte had stepped aside from the main lawn to rest beneath the shade of a royal marquee. Nearby, adults chatted with champagne flutes in hand, while children moved freely within the secured space, laughing and whispering. Kate stood a few feet away, speaking softly with a royal aide. Everything seemed peaceful, until it wasn't. Earlier in the day, Charlotte had been gifted a delicate handcrafted flower pin from a longtime family friend of the royals. It was nothing extravagant, just a small violet ornament made from fine felt and lace. But Charlotte loved it instantly. She'd pinned it just beneath her collar and checked it often, admiring how it danced slightly in the breeze. As the afternoon unfolded, Charlotte found herself standing near Lola, Camilla's granddaughter. Like Charlotte, Lola was well-dressed and impeccably behaved. Unlike Charlotte, she wasn't a royal by birth, though she'd grown up just close enough to the family to feel like she belonged, at least on the surface. The girls weren't friends exactly. They shared proximity, not intimacy. But they were often paired together at events like this: young, photogenic, easy to manage. Today was no different. They stood near each other again, smiling for onlookers, nodding politely at distant cousins. On the outside, everything looked perfect, until Lola reached out without warning and touched the flower pin. "Where'd you get this?" she asked, tone flat. Charlotte smiled, gently brushing her fingers over it. "Auntie Jules gave it to me this morning. Isn't it pretty?" Lola didn't answer. She tugged at it instead. "Hey, don't!" Charlotte said quickly, stepping back. "It's special to me." Lola's lips curved into a smirk. "It's just felt. Not even real jewels. Why are you acting like it's a crown?" Charlotte blinked, unsure how to respond. Lola pressed on, her voice still calm but sharp. "You always do this. Act like you're better than everyone. Just like your mom. She acts like a queen, but she's not. My grandma is." The air between them shifted. Charlotte stood still, unsure whether she'd misheard. "She's just pretending," Lola added. "Everyone talks about it." Charlotte's face changed, her brows furrowing. "And you," Lola continued, lowering her voice just enough so no one else could hear, "you're not going to be a queen. You're just going to be married off. Pretty dress, big smile, then forgotten. That's what girls like you are for." That did it. Charlotte stepped back like she'd been pushed. No yelling, no tears, at least not yet. Just a stunned silence. She turned, her steps quickening, and made her way across the lawn straight to Kate. No words, just that same flower pin now slightly crooked on her collar, trembling fingers reaching for her mother's hand. Kate saw her daughter's face and knew instantly. She knelt down, held her close, didn't ask, didn't need to. William, a few paces away, caught sight of them. The conversation he was having with his father stopped mid-sentence. His expression changed instantly, brows low, jaw clenched. He crossed the distance in seconds. What followed wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate, the kind of silence that feels louder than shouting. A look at Charlotte, a nod from Kate, then a long pointed glance in Lola's direction. He didn't say anything publicly, but those who were watching, did they catch the subtle signs that something serious had unfolded? Stay with us to uncover more. Kate's silence and William's reaction. Charlotte didn't speak, not then, not even when Kate knelt and cradled her close. She simply leaned into her mother's arms, burying her face into Kate's shoulder, as though the words she'd just heard had frozen her from the inside out. The once charming flower pin, now slightly bent, hung limply from her collar. Kate's hand instinctively moved to cover it, holding Charlotte steady, calm, protective, unmoving. From a distance, Prince William had seen just enough to know something was wrong. At first, he hesitated. In public, his every step was watched. His expressions were read like headlines. But that hesitation vanished the moment he saw Charlotte's eyes, glassy, wide, and searching for something that made sense. William crossed the lawn in a few long strides, his conversation with King Charles forgotten mid-sentence. He crouched beside them, Kate looked up with that same unreadable calm she wore in times of crisis. Their eyes locked, just for a second, but that was all it took. She didn't need to explain. She didn't have to say Lola's name. William understood. He rose and turned slightly. Just a few feet away stood Camilla's granddaughter, Lola, straightening her jacket and adjusting a pearl clip in her hair. Her expression was unreadable. She wasn't crying. She wasn't flustered. Just there, standing as though nothing had happened. William walked past her slowly, so close he could have said something. But he didn't. He glanced in her direction only briefly, jaw tight, lips pressed in a line. If Lola noticed the shift, she gave no sign. But others did. The energy changed. The warmth that usually followed the Cambridges had chilled. He returned to his daughter, placed a steadying hand on her back, and then, without saying a word, he led his family away from the crowd. No formal exit, no staff announcements. They just disappeared behind the curtain of palace security, leaving behind an event now quietly unsettled. That night, while the estate lights dimmed and the press filed their glossy photo recaps of the day, William didn't rest. Sources inside Kensington Palace later revealed that he stayed in his study well past midnight. No raised voice, no outburst, just stillness, determination. He reportedly requested internal logs, records of family events, staff notes, prior complaints. There had been whispers before about tensions with Camilla's side of the family. Nothing explosive, but enough to be unsettling. As the hours passed, aides close to him noted his focus narrowing, his silence growing colder. His decision wasn't impulsive, it was careful, collected. By morning, his message was ready. No official crest, no palace branding, just a quiet post on his personal account, one that stunned royal watchers around the globe. When it comes to my daughter, I draw the line, family or not. That was it. No tagging, no names, no elaborate caption, just 14 words, clear as glass, sharp as steel. The public reaction was immediate. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots. The message wasn't abstract, it wasn't vague. It was a father's warning shot. A royal declaration that this time, silence wouldn't be mistaken for tolerance. For insiders, the meaning was crystal clear. William had just made his stance public. And it wasn't about royal protocol or titles. It was about something far more personal. Boundaries, respect, and the right to protect his daughter without apology. Back at the palace, aides scrambled to control the fallout. Some advised issuing a clarifying statement. Others suggested reaching out to Camilla's team behind the scenes. But William refused to backtrack. This wasn't PR. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a boundary being carved into the royal stone. And for those who thought the comment made to Charlotte would simply disappear into the noise of royal headlines, they were about to learn something new. What Prince William did behind palace walls. The public only saw a sentence, just one. But inside the palace, that sentence hit like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples in every direction. Within hours of Prince William's subtle but unmistakable social media post, protocols shifted behind closed doors. No formal declarations were made. No meetings were scheduled. But instructions began moving quietly through the royal corridors, swift, precise, and final. At the top of the list, one name, Lola Parker. Without fanfare, without confrontation, William issued a quiet directive to senior aides. Lola's name was to be removed from all upcoming guest lists. No exceptions, no explanations. If an event was private, family-oriented, or involved the children in any way, she would not be there. This wasn't a punishment designed to make headlines. It was a boundary drawn with absolute clarity. Palace staff, though stunned, obeyed without question. They knew better than to challenge a directive from the future king. especially one delivered in a tone colder than any royal decree. Lola's passes to royal receptions? Revoked. Her spot at the annual family garden party? Erased. Even access to small holiday gatherings, those unseen by the press, was denied. The shift was total, and it came without any formal warning. At first, it didn't raise many eyebrows outside the palace walls, but it didn't take long. Just days later, reporters began preparing coverage for a private royal charity event, a tradition that usually included multiple generations of the extended royal family. When photos surfaced, keen observers noted something strange. Camilla was there beaming politely. So were the Wales children, dressed impeccably. But Lola, who was usually quietly present in the background, was nowhere to be seen. Tabloids noticed first. A headline popped up the next morning. "Where was Camilla's granddaughter?" The internet pounced. Social media timelines lit up with speculation. Was she unwell, traveling, or had something happened behind the scenes? It didn't take long for the truth to surface. A well-placed palace source confirmed to one reporter, Lola Parker had been deliberately removed from the royal guest list. And it wasn't a clerical error. That single leak was all it took to send the press into overdrive. Royal correspondents launched into over-analysis. Morning shows debated the ethics of excluding a child. Hashtags emerged overnight. Protect Charlotte? William draws a line. But inside Clarence House, the reaction was far more personal. Camilla was livid. The moment she learned that Lola's access had been revoked, she stormed out of a private meeting and demanded answers. To her, it wasn't just a matter of protocol. It was betrayal. A quiet, calculated move by William that struck at the heart of everything she'd spent 2 decades trying to build. Inclusion, acceptance, legacy. She reportedly confronted Charles, insisting that the decision be reversed. But Charles barely looked up from his paper. "It's been handled," he said simply. And in that moment, Camilla realized something chilling. For the first time, she had no say. Because this wasn't just a decision, it was a message. But what was the future king really trying to say? Stay tuned. Camilla pushes back. Camilla had seen many things over the years: public criticism, royal cold shoulders, the long winding road from scandal to acceptance. But nothing quite prepared her for this. One day, her granddaughter had been sitting comfortably in the royal fold. The next, she was quietly erased from it. No explanation, no conversation, just silence. At first, she thought it had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe Lola had simply fallen off the list for one event. Maybe someone in the palace had made a clerical mistake. But when Lola was excluded again, and then again, Camilla knew better. This wasn't random. It was deliberate. And so, behind the heavy doors of Clarence House, she confronted Charles. "You've seen what's happening," she said, her voice low but tight. "He's freezing her out, treating her like a stranger." Charles, ever composed, didn't look up. He'd been thumbing through the morning's political briefings, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. Without even a pause, he muttered the same 2 words that had started appearing throughout the palace lately. "It's handled." Camilla stared at him, stunned. "Handled?" she echoed, her tone rising. "She's a child, my grandchild." This wasn't some formal reprimand. It was emotional, personal, and completely unfair. Charles didn't engage. He rarely did when his mind was made up. "You're choosing silence over your own family," she added bitterly. "He made a public statement, a threat almost, and now he's punishing Lola for something you haven't even asked about." Still, Charles remained unmoved. Camilla left the room fuming, the conversation unfinished. But in her mind, the damage had already been done, not just to Lola, but to her. After 2 decades of carefully stepping around royal expectations, adjusting to traditions that weren't hers, she had finally earned a place at the heart of the monarchy. or so she thought. Now it felt like the door had slammed shut again. Only this time, it wasn't the public judging her. It was family. But the sting that cut deepest wasn't just from William. It was Kate. In Camilla's eyes, the Princess of Wales had played her role too well. Too quiet, too graceful, too untouchable. Ever since the incident at the event, Kate hadn't said a word, publicly. No interviews, no leaks, no sideways glances to the press. She simply held Charlotte's hand, stayed close, and remained composed. To the world, she looked like a model mother, poised and protective. To Camilla, it felt like a trap, a masterclass in silent persuasion. The image of Kate shielding her daughter had taken root in the public imagination, and there was no space left for nuance. "She knows what she's doing," Camilla told a close aide. "Always so polished, so innocent. But she's not. She's controlling this without lifting a finger." Kate, of course, didn't respond. She never did. But the more Camilla tried to rally support behind closed doors, the more she felt it. The space around her growing colder, the conversations shorter, the polite smiles turning into diplomatic distance. It wasn't just about a granddaughter anymore. It was about losing ground and realizing the palace wasn't standing with her. But as Camilla felt the cold shift inside the palace, was her influence slipping away for good? Stay tuned to find out. Camilla tries to leverage the press. For days, the palace said nothing. No official response, no carefully crafted statements, no softening words to ease the tension. But the silence said more than any press release ever could. In the absence of noise, the public made up their minds, and they chose Charlotte. Photos from the event had already gone viral. One in particular, Charlotte leaning into Kate's arms, her tiny face pressed close, Kate's hand covering the now familiar flower pin, became a symbol. Comment sections overflowed with words like grace, motherhood, and protection. Charlotte, only 9, had become the heart of a story far bigger than her. She was no longer just a princess. She was a daughter who had been quietly defended. And Camilla could feel the shift. She tried to fight it in the only way she still knew how: the press. Within a week, articles began popping up. Soft pieces in friendly publications, painting Lola as misunderstood. Sources close to the family described her as a bright, curious girl who didn't mean harm, just someone caught in the heat of a moment. Others leaned into Camilla's narrative, suggesting the palace had overreacted and that the real issue was lack of communication among royal households. But it didn't work. The public didn't buy it. Comments under those stories were ruthless. "You don't come for a child," one person wrote. Another said, "Charlotte showed more dignity in 5 minutes than Camilla's camp has all year." Hashtags like #TeamCharlotte and #KeepItRoyal flooded Twitter. Even longtime royal traditionalists, usually silent during family conflicts, broke their restraint to support William's quiet firmness. Inside Kensington Palace, William watched it all unfold. He hadn't asked for sympathy. He hadn't orchestrated public outrage. But now that it was here, he wasn't going to let it go to waste. In a quiet evening moment, away from advisors and courtiers, William gathered his children in their private drawing room. George sat cross-legged on the rug, Charlotte curled next to Kate, Louis humming softly under his breath. And that's when William said it, plainly, clearly, without anger, but without hesitation. "Camilla is not your grandmother. Your real grandmother is Diana." The words weren't meant to sting. They were meant to free. For too long, the line had been blurred, roles handed out by title, not by relationship. But William had decided legacy would no longer be determined by royal hierarchy. It would be shaped by love, memory, and loyalty. And in that same conversation, he made another choice, one he shared only with Kate and his closest advisors. Camilla would not be erased from royal history, But she would be quietly removed from its future. No portraits besides Diana's. No mention in the stories passed down to Charlotte and her brothers. No place in the intimate symbols that define what the crown means to them. The monarchy would remember her by title, but in William's house, in his heart, and the eyes of the next generation, she would be forgotten. But after William's quiet stand, what unseen shift began shaking the palace from within? Stay with us to find out. The quiet freeze. Within the palace walls. Camilla noticed it first in the smallest details. Fewer briefings, fewer invitations. Staff who once greeted her with warmth now offered polite smiles and little else. Her suggestions were acknowledged, but rarely implemented. Her presence, though still required, began to feel more ceremonial than respected. She tried to push back, to reassert her influence. She held quiet meetings with long-trusted aides, reached out to press allies, and even made subtle appeals to Charles at dinner. But his responses remained clipped, distant. "Let's not stir more than needed," he'd say. "The family is tired." The truth was harder to face. William didn't need to yell or remove titles. He had simply stepped forward, and the palace had followed. And Camilla? She was still Queen Consort in name, but her voice no longer echoed through the corridors that mattered. Not in family decisions, not in legacy. She had spent years earning her place, but all it took was one moment, one unspoken line drawn in Charlotte's defense, to remind her, acceptance doesn't always mean belonging. And now, the future of the crown was moving forward, without her at its center. But what do you think? Did William go too far, or was this the only way to protect his family's legacy? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so like, share, and subscribe for more royal insight.